So it is truly a distinct privilege to be the one designated to read this year's version of the poem. To elaborate a little bit on Matt's introduction, my connection with Colonel McCrae really is on two key points. One is as a proud member of Zeta Psi Fraternity, and in that respect, I think, standing here today, I represent not just myself, but I represent undergraduates as well as alumni at 53 different colleges and universities across the United States, Canada, and in fact the British Isles included. The other touch point with Colonel McCrae is obviously very proud of my service as a veteran. Admittedly, that's in the U.S. Navy as opposed to having served the Queen, but there is certainly a common touch point there, albeit separated by many decades. As I first went back to review this poem, which by the way represents an iconic piece of literature not only for the historians of what is now called World War I, it's also an iconic piece for Zeta Psi Fraternity, as it represents and is part of the new member education and has been for decades. It recognizes the commitment and the loyalty that we as fraternity brothers feel, similar to the experience when Colonel McCrae was in Belgium, similar to the experience that he felt upon the death of a close friend and colleague that actually prompted the writing of the poem. So it's a touch point certainly for Zeta Psi, it's a touch point certainly as a fellow veteran. But as I thought about it, it was really interesting because I was thinking, well, this is a World War I poem. And as I read it several times over and thinking about what it all meant, it occurred to me that it's more than a World War I poem, that it represents the courage, the sacrifice, the loyalty that is expected of sailors, soldiers, and Marines across any number of conflicts. That while the technology may change, the weapons may change, the politics that may have been a prelude to the conflict certainly change, that the common thread around that is the sacrifice that those who serve, those who, if I can borrow a Navy phrase, in the words of John Paul Jones, those who choose to go in harm's way, that does not change. And in that context, I think the poem transcends multiple generations, certainly multiple conflicts, and I think is something that we can all, whether we be military or civilian, that we can all recognize, and the word remembrance is, I think, a very appropriate label for it, that whatever the issue, when it rises to the need for armed conflict, that we want to remember and recognize the cost and the sacrifice of those who in fact go and serve in our behalf. So with that, it is a really distinct privilege to be the one reading the poem. You'll notice here, in deference to the age demographics of the speakers, I printed it out in slightly larger font so that I could do this without my reading glasses. But in all seriousness, take yourselves back to May 1915. For all of us, those are grainy black and white films on the History Channel. But imagine you're in the throes of a very, very ugly time, and yet you're finding the time and the wherewithal to write what is really a marvelous piece of literature. In Flanders fields the poppies blow, between the crosses row on row that mark our place. And in the sky the larks still bravely singing fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields.
Tipperary, it's a